I welcome you all to our Leadership Studio series, an initiative of MIT Institute of Training and Development, which is the cutting-edge learning and development solutions partner to corporates and particularly BFSI sector. I'm sure all our viewers will experience a very interesting conversation with plenty of insights on the insurance sector from our guest this morning, Mr. Vishy Vishwanand, Deputy Managing Director, Max Life Insurance, and he likes to be addressed as Vishy. So I'll address him as Vishy. We would be happy to take up questions from viewers who can put their questions in the chat. Before we start our interesting discussion, I would like to briefly introduce our speaker this morning. Vishy is an industry veteran with a dynamic presence in the financial service space for over 22 years. He is working in the capacity of Deputy Managing Director at Max Life Insurance and is an esteemed member of the board. He is a founder team member and has been associated with Max Life for nearly 2 decades. And I was told that he is one of the oldest employees of Max Life and has consistently demonstrated qualitative leadership across diverse verticals including agency, bank insurance, direct sales, product development, persistency management, operations, technology and quality, and you name it, and he has served in every department of Max Life. And he's a doyen and is a veteran in insurance sector. Over the years, he has also played a very instrumental role in not only propelling Max Life to emerge as industry leader in conservation ratio, 61st month persistency, claims paid ratio and customer loyalty, but also win several global and national accolades in quality and technology, including the coveted gold medal at ASQ, which is American Society for Quality, and RBNQA, which is Ramkrishna Bajaj National Quality Award, constituted by IMC Chamber of Commerce. So yes, I'm sure it will be a very interesting discussion with Vishy. And the topic for today is reimagining the future, which is the life insurance sector in next 5 years. So we're talking about a lot of things which are futuristic in nature. Coming back to insurance, the 2020 Global Insurance Outlook highlights this very unique moment for the industry. Never before has such great potential been side by side with significant risk put together. It also outlines imperatives and priorities for insurance as they look to make a meaningful impact on the short-term results and prepare for a long-term success. To borrow a famous line from literature, I would say the current state of the insurance industry can be described as the best of times and the worst of times. So it is a very, very unique situation where we are into. So my first question to you is that India accounts merely 2% of the total world insurance premium, and seeing the potential of growth is immense for the insurance sector. What has been the impact of COVID-19 on life insurance sector in India?
Well, thank you, Ashish. Thank you for that very generous introduction. Great to be here in the morning with young minds and curious minds more than anything else.
Right.
To answer your question specifically, I found it very interesting, the words you used. The challenge and the opportunity that lies ahead of the Indian insurance industry. I'd like to take this in 2 parts. First is India as a whole and what's been happening even pre-COVID, because COVID might be a bend in the road, but there's always been a story even before that. And what if COVID did not happen? Where would India be? Right? From a life insurance perspective. So, like you rightly said, the share of global insurance premiums that India has is far lower than the share of population of the planet. So we only have about 2.4% share of global insurance premiums, and we are number 10 in the premium ranking of all countries in the planet. And as you know, population, we are number 2, closely trending towards number 1.
Okay.
However, a very interesting opportunity is that we are number 1 in policies. So number of lives insured at 36 crores Indians, we constitute the largest population group in sheer numbers in terms of life insurance acceptance and retention of those policies. So that's an interesting opportunity, which is showing that maybe the ticket size are small, but many people have actually been covered in sheer numbers. And there is a life insurance marketing and research association called NIMRA, which is based in North America, and their study shows that people buy at least 7 times in a 35-year lifespan of working. So when you typically work for 30-35 years, you will buy once every 5 years.
Okay.
And so this is a well-known fact, especially when you get your first job. That's when I bought my first policy. Then when you get married, or first child actually is the biggest trigger. Then when you settle down and purchase your first home, then maybe a job or promotion which gives you a lift, and then your child's education, child's marriage, and then your own retirement. So these are all life stages which happen, and typically in what actually is called quinquennial ages, which is every 5 years. So, so the opportunity of this 36 crore population, which has already purchased insurance, to buy more is far greater than going to a person who has not purchased insurance actually. So the propensity of somebody buying a policy again after purchasing the first policy is significantly larger than convincing the person to buy insurance for the first time. So that's the opportunity that we have in India. Having said that, we do fare poorly in the mortality protection gap survey, which is again done once in 5 years by a reinsurer, one of the largest reinsurers in the world, called Swiss Reinsurers. But interestingly, this mortality protection gap that India has, which keeps it at a rank of 9 out of 13 Asian countries, because our coverage is used to be in 2015 when the last study was done. Previous study was done was only 7.5%. That means if you take all of India as one household and you calculate how much of insurance is required if the breadwinners were to disappear one day to keep the rest of the families going, if that figure is 100 rupees, the coverage was only 7.5 rupees in India, including real estate, assets, PPF, all kind of wealth and life insurance policies. Yeah, only 7.5. And interestingly, this needle has moved very rapidly in the last 5 years. And that, Ashish, is very heartening to know, because the 7.5 has jumped up to 17% in the study which was just concluded in July 2020. So this is only hot off the pan. And interestingly, this big jump is the leading jump in all of the Asian countries. So that means the first point which I mentioned, which is that this number of policies and the fact that we are underinsured, but we have a large number of insurance policy holders in the country. It looks like now they are getting more and more tuned towards purchasing real protection. That's very, very heartening as well. So that is the India story, pre-COVID. Now, what has COVID done to this sector? Interestingly, right after COVID, the first lockdown, I think that was on 23rd March when it began. Seems like a long time ago, more than 200 days now.
Yes.
Yes, there was a sudden, very peculiar spike in Google searches for the term life insurance, for term insurance, and so on. And the spike went up to nearly 85% higher than the previous year.
Oh, yeah.
And this is very interesting, because Google knows more about us than we do about ourselves. And when you aggregate all these Google searches, and we get these Google Analytics reports, it shows that this sudden spike is contrarian to the rest of Asia. In Asia, the same searches for term insurance or life insurance actually saw a drop. Whether it is Philippines, Hong Kong, Singapore, Thailand, Malaysia, they all saw a decline at the same time. However, in India, we saw a sudden spike, which has been unprecedented before. So this gives me confidence that it might be subjective, that I think Indians love their families more. Right? Because when faced with fear and adversity, we look for risk protection. While the rest of Asia were busy scurrying for themselves. I think there was no search for their families or families' protection or financial security. They were looking at other things, such as how do I keep myself, my health, my immunity, my masks, my sanitizers. While in India, besides all of that, we also saw a huge spike in this search for family protection. So that's very interesting as well. And I think there are broadly two large fears. One is this fear of health and life, and second is the fear of loss of health and life actually. And second is the loss of financial capital. If you recall, in March we saw a bloodbath in the equity markets, and then interest rates also started declining rapidly. So people saw that capital being eroded. So not only was there fear of health and life, but there was also fear of my financial capital. What will happen to that? What will happen to these lowering returns? How do I meet my child's education plan that I have in my mind? How do I meet my own retirement? Suddenly I'm seeing the corpus come down. Forget interest, even the corpus coming down. Yeah, and we did a survey, Ashish. This was the India Protection Quotient Survey through Indian Market Research Bureau, Kantar IMRB. This was like June, July, across urban India, all digitalized customers who are digitally savvy, and we asked them, what is your reason to save? And we found a dramatic change post-COVID in the reason to save overall. So the number one reason always used to be, for the last 5 years, saving for my child's education. Number one reason. And number two is for my retirement. This has undergone a change post-COVID. The number one reason has become saving for medical emergencies. Perhaps even COVID treatment. Because there was so much confusion around it, with so many WhatsApp messages going around. Nobody knew what is true, what is fake, what had happened, how much is the cost of ICU, what is hospitalization, bed milega ki nahi milega, jab chahiye. So all these kind of questions came up. And suddenly 57% of India in this survey was saying that we are more interested in protecting our here and now financial corpus and preparing for medical emergencies. So essentially the impact of all of this is that very interestingly, what's happened to the sector is that the private sector has degrown. There is 23 life insurance companies on overall has degrown by 11%. Okay, in the first half of the year. While sum assured has actually grown by 16%. It's a very interesting phenomena where the premium has reduced. The total premiums collected, new business, has reduced by 11%, but the sum assured that these reduced premiums have gone through the roof at a 16% growth. Companies like ours, Max Life, has grown by 40% during this time, in these 6 months, in sum assured, which means India ko protection chahiye, and Indians ko pata hai chahiye. I think they need that nudge. So the focus on providing protection and guaranteed options is really, that onus falls on life insurance companies. That will mean taking more risks, mortality risks as well as investment risks, but with risk comes greater margins. So hopefully we should see margin profile increase in insurers. We are seeing about, last count I saw about 6 insurers in the top 10 showing growth, signs of growth in Q2 already, which means that maybe after Q3 is completed, let's say by the end of this calendar year, we would see a majority of them actually turning back into the growth path. So that, I hope I've answered your question rather long.
Yeah, definitely. And in fact, very, very interesting things which you have shared with us in terms of the growth in sum assured and the spike in Google searches regarding term insurance, which was not the case in terms of other Asian countries. Which I was reading is barring Japan, all other Asian countries are also doing very, very good in terms of the insurance premium as far as the sector is concerned. But I mean, very interesting fact which you said, it is like term insurance, it was India which was leading more. And I mean, I feel what you're saying is absolutely right. No, unless until there's some fear, we do not, we are not that sensitized or aware of our insurance requirements otherwise. Until something, something like COVID comes, which, gives us a jolt, and, we are forced to rethink. In fact, if we see from our, earlier times and when we started taking up a job, for us, insurance was nothing but a tax saving proposition only. I mean, it was not look beyond tax saving. This is something, what LIC used to tell us, or everybody for that matter. So even now, I talk to people and they think that it is something which is you only get when you're not there. It is for your family. What does you get? So my next question is related to this: is how are life insurance companies which are competing not only the peers but also industry alternatives such as your asset management or pure wealth management, So how does insurance sector cater to that? Seek to differentiate themselves as a value-added services, which is non-monetary, and non-monetary benefits, particularly health coverage, which is continue to converge now. So as you rightly mentioned, it has become number one, which was child's education was number one, and now it is the health factor which has become number one. So how it has changed, how the things are changing in this direction?
Yes, that's a very interesting question personally to me, because I spent, Ashish, about little less than 10 years working in a foreign bank before joining Max Life 2 decades ago. And in those 10 years, I must share, gives us bragging rights then, that we were the largest distributors of mutual funds, third-party mutual funds in the country, with just about 86 branches, right? This is going way back in time, more than 25 years ago. However, we saw a couple of equity downturns. I don't know if you recall, there was a Harshad Mehta scam, and there was a bloodbath in the BSE, and then there was a Ketan Parekh scam. So from scam to scam we kept going, and the markets kept going up and down. And after some time, I felt a kind of hollowness, because I found that customers were purchasing basis our advice. And our advice was basis past returns or something. Nobody could predict the future, right? And it was a great idea to invest in equity, because in the 1990s, the equity market was in a bull run, largely, except when these scams came. And I felt a little hollowness, because none of the customers got back to me saying, "Aapne kya mujhe becha hai?" But I felt a little empty inside. And then this life insurance sector opened up. And I found that the role of life insurance actually is very unique compared to mutual funds, compared to fixed deposits, and such like. It's actually, the role is unique, and it is embedded inside every product of life insurance and in the policy contract. And that is the word sum assured. This sum which is assured, and the definition of sum assured, if you Google it, it will say is that the guaranteed amount which is payable on occurrence of the insured event. The guaranteed amount which is payable on occurrence of the insured event being two, either on death or on maturity. Both ways, this amount is guaranteed. And usually, the sum assured is significantly higher than the premiums you pay, never less than 10 times nowadays. Because if it's less than 10 times, you don't even get 1010D cover, which means your maturity corpus will actually be taxable. So on an average, it is about 15 times. Means of an annual premium, if you pay 1 rupee, you get at least 15 rupees of cover, guaranteed on death or on maturity. On top of this, you have the fund value growth, you have your bonuses declared, and so on. So that is the number one differentiator, which is not available in other products. In a mutual fund, you will get what you put, 100 rupees plus some growth, right? Here you are putting only 5 or 10 rupees, but you are getting a guarantee of 100 rupees in this example that I took. Come what may, on maturity or death, provided you don't lapse your policy, provided you stick your part of the contract as a customer, the company is bound to stick its part of the contract through this policy contract terms and this word called sum assured. So I find it, as a banker, I used to find it quite amusing that branch mein, when we give a home loan out, people come and distribute, the customer comes and distributes laddus and say, "Muh meetha kariye." पर हमें तो लड्डू बांटना चाहिए एज अ बैंकर, क्योंकि घर तो हमारा है, आपने तो लोन लिया है। जब तक आप लास्ट ईएमआई नहीं पे करेंगे, until then, the home is mine. The home is mine. You might be opening it, but the home is mine, right? And that people don't realize. However, in insurance, the moment you pay even your first monthly premium, your cover and your living benefit through this word called sum assured is guaranteed. So it is quite contrarian, and that's the risk that life insurers take. And I'm very happy to see that this risk-taking capability has increased, especially during COVID times. So essentially, the role of life insurance, how is it differentiated? Through sum assured, it makes it safe, it makes it systematic, right? Because every year you're paying. Now tomorrow if we stop your SIP in a mutual fund, who's going to call you and say, please put it, and who's going to convince you again saying, please put it, it's a child's education? No one will call you. Because it's not even, they don't care. They'll move on, right? And that's all there is to it. However, in life insurance, the insurance company, the agent advisor will be after you. to pay the renewal premium.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that is the beauty of safe and systematic. And everyone needs a bit of discipline. And lastly, it is self-completing through the sum assured. Come what may. If you live and mature, or if you die in the policy, during the policy tenure. So that is an interesting part. And we did a survey, Ashish, among our customers to find out, do they understand sum assured? And if they understand sum assured, does it increase their bonding with us? Does it increase their bonding with their customer loyalty? And the loyalty measure that we use is NPS, the Net Promoter Score. And very interestingly, I saw that when we did a sample and we checked customers across various cohorts, and we have about close to 4 million customers now. When we checked with a sample of them, we found that those who remembered their policy sum assured, their NPS was in the range of 40s. That means the promoters, the people who give a score of 9 or 10, subtracted by people who give a score from 0 to 6. That is the NPS. When asked the question saying how likely are you to recommend this brand to your friends, family, colleagues, right? On a scale of 0 to 10. So when you do this Net Promoter Score, those who know that sum assured, it's in the 40s. Those who don't remember their sum assured, they only remember the premium they have to pay. Their Net Promoter Score is minus, in the negative zone. So again, it is showing that understanding this product category is very important. I find it funny that it's like people remember their premiums, but sometimes they don't remember the sum assured, right? It's like you remember the value of your EMI that you're paying for your home loan, but you don't know the value of your home.
Home loan.
So then the EMI is only that is the role of life insurance and how it is differentiated from AMCs or bank offerings.
Yeah, so I mean, as you rightly said, people are not aware or not sensitized, or rather, I would say not very sensitive about, what are the insurance requirements and how they decide on the sum assured and things like that. I mean, traditionally, what we have seen is that insurance customers in India still prefer to purchase through an intermediary. In terms of like agents we have, and these agents are no other people here. They are basically somebody from your family, friends, and you know them. They come to your family functions, and they are deeply integrated with your family in every aspect. I mean, every which way they can be offering. Now, with the evolution of digital sales and service offerings is changing the ecosystem of insurance sector, more so which has happened due to COVID-19. So with the emergence of new digital technology in the insurance sector, which is heading towards like robo-advisors, artificial intelligence and data-powered systems and much more, how do you see these technologies changing the ecosystem of insurance sector in India? From intermediaries to digital technologies and new ways of approaching the clients and customers.
Yes, that's interesting. Because, to share with you on the digital side, so we view the business as two ways. Acquiring new customers. One is the B2B side, which is the traditional agents or bank sellers face-to-face model, and the other is the B2C side or the online side, where you just open your website, it's open, and customers come and buy, or they might go to a web aggregator such as Policybazaar and all of them, and compare and buy online, sitting in the comfort of their homes or their own offices. Interestingly, we find that even in that and digital, the split for a company like Max Life is 80-20 in number of policies. 80% is B2B, about anywhere between 15 and 22% in number of policies is online. This is by and large quite comparable with leading companies even in China or other, let's say, digitally savvy economies, much higher than North America or for that matter Europe. So there is valency in saying that India is in the digital program, right? At least in the BFSI or at least life insurance perspective, and I'm sure in general insurance it is even higher, the take-up rate. The digital online business, though you might think that it is all purchased, in the comfort of your home through just like you do a net banking transaction, let's say. However, the reality is that 80 to 85% is assisted by a human. Okay, even in a purchase of a product like term insurance, what largely sells is term insurance. Even in those, about 80-85% people want to know more than what they read and see. In fact, they don't. I think if you know what you want to look for, then you can look for it, right? But if you're not sure what you need to look for, You'd like to know because the contract, average policy contract is for 40 years. For 40 years. So it's not a decision to buy now like an Amazon purchase, which you can return and so on. It's a 40-year decision. We do provide a free look period for 1 month. But what is going to change in 1 month? So they ask all those questions. And typically there is 20 minutes of talk time on an average, happening with a call center executive who's been trained and licensed to, it's like an agent on the phone. Yeah, but that service is required, and it's not unique to India, by the way. On the traditional offline space, this digitalization and new technologies have actually pushed us to question some holy cows, especially in the last 200 days. I'll give you some examples. First one is training is always best done face-to-face, Vishy. My team will tell me, right? We need 1 trainer per office at least, preferably 2. That is being questioned now when we shut our offices, right? And still training is happening through virtual means. And training is actually shifting to learning anywhere, anytime, on demand. And suddenly we are seeing that we might not have 322 trainers in our 322 offices, but if you have a bunch of, let's say, 5 great trainers, we can beam them to all 300 at the same time. And they are all in a virtual classroom and they'll get the best training and the best SME support, the best subject matter expert support available in the nation. So this was a new thing that we learned. The second holy cow question was agent recruitment, right? Recruiting new agents, and typically we recruit about 25 to 30,000 new agents every year. So and the sector recruits about 20 lakhs is the total. So about around the total recruitment is about 10 lakhs in the private sector, and perhaps an equal amount whereabouts in the public sector. So this recruitment machinery and the new recruited agents contribute to nearly 40% of a company's top line in any given year. So this fuel, when social distancing came, when people were not meeting up, people were scared to meet up, people were even scared to go to an examination center and write an agent exam, we have proven that it can be done virtually. So the agent recruitment can actually be done virtually through recruitment webinars, and that has actually created growth. So now we are actually showing significant growth than in the past, and we are finding that we are able to tap new segments. There were many entrepreneurs who could not come with the entrepreneurial mindset, but they couldn't come to our office every day, and sit for the training and then be there for 8 hours a day and then continue visiting us. We are realizing that guess what? That was not required. They are most welcome to come, but it wasn't essential. And that agent recruitment can be virtualized. The third is even sales management practices. This daily check-in, check-out calls, the sales huddles that happen between a supervisor and his team members. Why should that happen in person? Why can't we do it virtually over WebEx, over Zoom, over a WhatsApp video call? And that's really transformed as well. So that our producers, our sellers don't have to come to the office and then go to the client space. They can go directly and save on time, energy and effort. So that has changed. Prospects, consumers will not conclude sales virtually. They have to see a human being. That is again a mindset. And we realized that in the first quarter, nearly more than half of our sales were happening all virtually, fully, paperless, signatureless. And the entire solicitation has happened virtually. Of course, with a lot of input and effort and transformation. But the new technologies, Ashish, that are available today, I can only thank our stars that COVID is happening now and not 10 years ago. If it happened 10 years ago, we would have crumbled. But now we are hardly skipping a beat, and that's all because of these new technologies. So we have to identify this new organization muscle and guard it and grow it. Because even post a COVID recovery, we should not lose this training prowess of conducting webinars and learning instead of training. We should not lose this digital recruitment capability. We should not lose this remote selling capability or conducting sales management huddles virtually, right? While some will be reversed and some digital modes, digital items will get accelerated, such as digital artifacts. So now, if all our training modules are available, even consumer-facing modules are available on do-it-yourself videos, which we were not prodded to do because there is always a 70 kg human being in front of the customer. So now that's not there. So we prepared ourselves for it, and our agents are loving it, our sellers are loving it, and I think our customers are adopting it also very well. including do-it-yourself calculators and tools. It gives them control, right? And they don't feel pressurized when they see a person sitting in front of them. So I think the quality of sales and the market conduct will also improve in this kind of a scenario.
Yeah, I mean, very rightly said, people are coerced or pressurized, somebody sitting in front of them and telling them, no, this is good for you, this is not good for you. And this has actually given, what we call is the emerging trend in customer preferences in life insurance industry now. There has been a paradigm shift which I have seen, and it is not about product anymore. It is more about the experience which the consumers are looking for. I mean, what Amazon, you can see, what Amazon is doing is it's more of a customer experience rather than the product which people are interested into. And that has brought in a huge amount of paradigm shift, what you were mentioning a while ago about the intermediaries or agents, and we are looking at we'll be surprised, or rather most of the business will be done through robo agents, robo advisors, I would say, which is the new term which has been coined, the new terms. So there's a paradigm shift. Just want to know, how do you see this, that it's more of a customer experience than the product part? You come out with different innovative products.
Sure. I hear your question, Ashish, but I'm actually going to give you an answer which might disappoint you.
Okay.
Yes. Having been in financial services for 29 years, I still think that financial services actually at the root of it is dealing with money, which is a man-made concept. Humans don't understand money.
Okay.
What was battery inflation? What is this currency? What barter system we can understand somewhat, but currency, money, what, right? And then time, right? Because financial services talks about money and time over time, whether you take a loan or you get a deposit interest or whatever it might be, right? Both these concepts, the human mind finds it difficult to understand. Okay, so that's why one needs to sit, talk, and as you talk, you're thinking. And robo-advisory is great, and I know countries like Singapore who tried robo-advisory. It is still a showpiece. I don't think it is monetizable yet. And that's why trust and relationship continues to remain the dominant factor in terms of choice or selection of which company, which brand, and which advisor, which product. Okay, so I'll give you some equations that we use in this B2C and the B2B. In the B2C market, which is business to consumer, which is our direct to consumer online market, there are 6 factors we look at. Experience is one of them, but actually it is the last one. Okay, because we try various experiments. It happens every now and then we try, A/B testing, and we know that the number one factor is brand, not experience. Okay, in financial services, because they want their security. So even if there is a poor experience, no problem if the brand is strong.
Right.
So they will reduce their expectations of the brand.
Okay.
Second is product features. Very important, the product features. Right. Third is the price. And you mentioned Amazon, Flipkart, but all of us know heart on heart, when the big billion days happens is when the real sales takes off. Which means the price discount. Right? So price has a big factor in India. Very value conscious market. You can't take Indians for a ride.
India is a price conscious market for years.
Yeah. And that's why iPhone purchases are there in India, but it's the lowest segment in India. Because they're saying, well, I don't mind this brand. If the price is better, I'll go for that. Right? So it's only the top market which is really purchasing the brand and the experience. The fourth is in insurance claims. What is your claims paid ratio? Will you stand by my family at the moment of truth? Fifth is your entry conditions and your eligibility. Right? There are eligibility, right? There's underwriting. So that's the fifth. And last is actually experience.
Okay.
The online market. Remember, there is no agent, there's nothing, customer sitting and choosing, no one can influence the customer. But we've seen that this is the hierarchy of selection. While in our offline sales, which is face to face, the number one factor is not experience again, is relationship.
Right.
Is there someone I trust? So, you'll ask a few questions maybe, but you really expect all the answers, comparisons, everything. And then you only have 40 minutes time, 35 minutes time, And you say, go ahead with it, do you recommend it? Then the final question is, would you recommend it? Have you bought this yourself? These are the kind of questions which come. Yeah, how many customers have bought this? So the herd mentality, I don't want to be the first person. Right? So relationship, product features, price and benefits, and then not even my experience, actually experience of the seller. Because if the seller experience is excellent by the insurance company's processes, and then the seller narrates it in their words that the customer understands, saying, company acha hai, product badhiya hai. The seller should be happy. And then the relationship factor takes over. So, sorry to disappoint you. But
I'm not disappointed. In fact, I wanted to know because I was interested to know whether these things will really work or not. In the Indian context. So that's the reason. I was interested in asking because it's happening elsewhere in the world. But is it going to make a difference in our case or not? So
it does make a difference, Ashish, in the bottom of the funnel, not on the top of the funnel. So it's not a selection criteria, but it can be a rejection criteria. Why the customer will reject you if the experience is poor.
Also very interesting thing which you mentioned about iPhone. I have read and heard many times. It is like it is not about how much you're worth or what is your salary, thing like that. It all depends on which premium phone you are using. If you're logging in through an iPhone, the pricing of the premium changes and things changes. Is that happening? And this is what I have read many times that decides AI and other things decides through which phone you are logged in for inquiry or something like that for premium.
Yeah, interesting. So this hyper personalization, if you may call it.
Right.
Yes, we do use it, but we don't change premiums. Good news is we are regulated. So it's not an unregulated entity like, let's say, Google or Amazon or Facebook. Right? It is regulated, including the price and the premium. We cannot deviate from it, and we do not want to deviate from it. It erodes trust. But having said that, yes, and to answer a very specific question, if a person searches our website and gets a quotation for a policy from an iPhone versus an Android, we know that the iPhone conversion rate is higher.
Okay.
That's all. So we'll be happy.
That's the correlation which you have.
I think it has a socio-economic correlation. It's just like a CIBIL thing. If you see the CIBIL score of that iPhone user, it's probably higher than that of a non-iPhone user. That's all. It's just a socio-economic kind of flag. That's it. If we do anything about it, well, perhaps we would. Our way of messaging to that consumer would be very different than otherwise. That's all. In a language which that other person understands, or in a language which other iPhone customers have understood. That we try to do. That's the level of personalization, but I don't think it's a personalization to the factor of 1. No. Like telecom companies, we haven't got there yet. But having said that, in policy issuance and underwriting, we do things like if you get all your KYC documents from the bank. Why do you need to run again for your proof of identity, proof of address? So we can get that from the bank, we do that. CIBIL scores, we can get that instead of asking you for your ITRs, IT returns or your last 3 years, your bank statements, all of that, we can avoid. And we also have an industry insurance bureau. So the bureau provides us fraud data so that we can go through it and, we don't have to, there might be 1% fraudsters. The 99% needn't be put through the same checks. To catch that 1% fraudster, right? And that database is evolving every day as we speak. And all insurance companies are participating in the Insurance Information Bureau's database. And then we also try through the CERSAI, the Central KYC, which I think is gaining momentum, and it's a government initiative, part of the Government of India's software stack, and that's working. That's again catching pace. So if you have a mutual fund, we can ping with your PAN number and get all your details and ask you if you're okay with it, go ahead. So you don't have to provide fresh documents every time you go to a bank or a mutual fund or an insurance company, right? So that really helps in terms of anti-money laundering ticks and in terms of underwriting ticks, especially financial. And I think with the digitalization of health cards and your health records, which the government is now beginning, it just begun during COVID times only. I think that will also help in medical underwriting in times, maybe 10 years later. So I think this kind of hyper personalization and technology enablement will really help improve the overall customer experience and reduce the effort of customers. Thanks to this, we are able to bring out innovative buy now and pay later products. So buy now, don't give a premium now until we are ready to underwrite you, and before we are ready to accept your policy, we say, okay, you're cleared, okay now, and you say, okay, that's when we will ping you. So, you're paid only after the services are fully accepted from both parties, rather than you paying upfront. And if we reject you, we are refunding you premium and incurring more cost, right? So that's the kind of work which is happening, and hyper personalization. I think we're still a long distance away from it, but baby steps have begun.
So taking cue from what you said, about the underwriting process and things like that, I like, since we're talking about reimagining the future in next 5 years, like blockchain technology and cloud computing and cognitive computing, these are new technologies, and that, as I was reading, is like a blockchain based solution can combine the current death registration and the death claim process into a single simplified procedure, requiring minimum intervention from multiple stakeholders, and that is actually making a quantum jump, or rather what we say, it is like termed as the game changer, a potential game changer in the insurance sector. So what are your views on these technologies which are like blockchain and cognitive computation, and how will it actually lead to customer experience, what we are talking about?
So essentially, I know this is about, I'm going back nearly 4 years. The industry set up 2 use cases and about half a dozen companies each with their specialist IT teams worked on the blockchain use cases. Right? It was in the area of underwriting and fraud prevention. Net, I think it died a slow death.
Okay.
So I think because one, again, we are regulated industry, right? So it's not, you don't have to, and privacy and security is embedded in regulations. Okay. So in such a situation, do we need to collect all of this? In fact, we even tried saying, medical records might be private and personal, so let's use blockchain there. And this was one of the use cases as well. But however, we're saying that, guess what, your medical report is not constant all the time. It's valid for maximum a year, after which we need to test you again. So then the use case breaks, unless you're buying policies every month, right? So I think that's where we are. But having said that, these central databases which are secure and provide the same convenience is available. The customer doesn't mind; he doesn't care what technology you're using, blockchain or not, as long as you're making his effort. So I think that is working. RPA use cases are working, Ashish, in very mundane situations such as bank reconciliation. So all of that is being done. Even many banks have started using RPA for that. But again, does it result in cost takeouts? Not much, because the cost of labor in India is still very cheap. But it does result in customer experience improvement and TATs, the turnaround times, dramatically improving. So we are able to pay our claims very quickly. Today, as I speak, more than half of our claims are paid in what we call Insta claims within 24 hours. In fact, by 3 o'clock, if a death claim comes in, the documents are okay, we pay, same day you'll find the funds in the nominee's account for a death claim, right? So these technologies are used, like you said, basis use cases to improve customer experiences. Significant technologies to improve or reduce costs is still questionable, though the journey has begun.
Very interesting. These technologies and the explanation or the case studies which you have talked about gives a lot of clarity in terms of what we actually are listening to or hearing to, and what actually the application part is. Now I would shift slightly to another aspect of employees. The other aspect, how COVID has, like you're talking about, people started working from home. So most of the employees are working from home and virtual teams. This pandemic has actually brought in tremendous change in human resource planning, as you were mentioning about the training part, face-to-face training and virtual training. Like we also have, transformed into virtual training company, and we cater to corporate requirements in terms of we run beautiful performance enablement programs, which is not about training or giving gyan or giving knowledge. It's more about enabling the person to perform better. and in a very short capsules of 1.5 hours or 2 hours, we are running, and it's very, very big popular hit as far as these programs are concerned. And topics are very simple, creative thinking, or for odd men, how to cater to this situation, and how to reduce stress, and how to improve your productivity, things like that. So performance enabling upskilling employees is very, very important at this point of time. Things are changing, technology is changing. So how do you think, in these unprecedented times, how you would like to make your employees future ready? What are your what is your thinking? What are you doing about it?
Yes. Ashish, I always believe that, to be future ready, first you should be present ready.
Right.
Because if there is no present, what is the future?
Right.
And I think COVID has given us a glimpse of the future, which is, work from home, work from anywhere. Why should you need these physical, meetings and physical workplaces and so on? Yes. So we conducted a pulse survey, an employee survey among our 15,000 employees about, this was in early April. And we found that we have two components out of 15,000 employees. About 13,500 are in the field. So they are in sales related, sales management. And their number one issue was, how do I achieve my goals in this world of social distancing? How do I achieve my goals? And then we found another segment, which is the support functions and our corporate support functions in home office and so on. Their issue was different. They said, I want a work-life balance. I don't know when work begins, when family begins, it's all merged into one thing, and there's causing stress. Right? So two different, very different problems. So how do we go about solving it? The first problem was the field problem, because that's the larger number, right? 13,500. And our sales and business and customers depend on them. So what we did was, and they are spread out, 322 branches, physical branches, and 1,500 bank branches where our people are present. So it's a large distribution across the country. So what we did was, we had to transition them from this face-to-face model to a home-to-home model, from their home to the customer's client's home, right? And somebody said, Rishi, it's not just home-to-home. It might be H2H, but please call it heart-to-heart, because insurance is still an emotional product. It is not all left-brain. So emotional quotient has to be added in this digital world. Okay, great. So what we did was we launched a kind of a mission, if you may call it, called Mission Possible.
Okay.
The Tom Cruise movie, Mission Impossible. So we said, "Ye mission mumkin hai, is possible," right? And Mission Possible 2020 was launched on the 3rd of April, I recall, on a Friday. And in April week 1, we designed these processes, all our processes, customer-facing processes, sales, service, everything. From face-to-face to this H2H, home-to-home, digital. Second week, we deployed it with our frontline sellers, all our frontline employees, these 13,500. The third week of April, we selected our top 10,000 agent advisors and top 10,000 bank sellers and trained them and certified them, all virtually. They were all in their homes in April during the first lockdown. And then in week 4, we expanded to all our 46,000 agent advisors and our 50,000 bank staff who are licensed to sell match-life policies. And then we did a 4x4 training program, essentially, which is 1 on digital sales, 2 on using digital training. These were work streams, using digital training on in a large scale. Third was virtual sales management processes. All our sales management processes and governance had to become virtualized. And lastly, it was the agent recruitment. This was the toughest, and I'm most satisfied with this. Imagine recruiting a person on a variable career in a very harsh career where for every yes, you might get 7 or 8 no's. The rejection rate is very high, right? So recruiting them digitally and training them and launching them, right? So these were the 4 work streams, and these were enabled through digital marketing and enablement tools. So everything, all our content from paper-based and PPT-based was made digital and mobile screen-based. So we had to think mobile first and transition all of that. All our onboarding, which we had taken for granted, क्योंकि बंदा है ना, customer है ना, physically है, 1-2 paper हो तो होने दो, signature लेके आएगा. We had to change all of that. So it's all become, right from your payment process to your solicitation process, your product suitability, your need analysis, everything was virtualized. to make it friction free, so that the onboarding process became signatureless and paperless. The third was analytics engine. Whom to go and meet, when to go and meet. So that was also driven and centrally controlled and showered to the field. And finally, a listening post, because no one knew what we were doing, will it be right or wrong. So we had to have a very active listening post. So we set up and institutionalized the listening post, and it's still continuing now. I think that's a big new muscle that we have developed, which is large ears, to listen what's happening from our customers and the front line. So with this, in April, we were just about 20% of our last year's sales in the first week of April. By the time we ended up the first quarter, we came to 80% of the sales of last year in quarter one, and we are very happy. And then in quarter two, around the third month of quarter two, we actually came to growth. We managed degrowth, and hopefully we'll see now on the growth path henceforth. So that's been very interesting overall for this for the field. For the home office, what we did was enable them to work from home, right? Which is the laptops, or take your desktops if you're comfortable with that from the office. We got to ship things like chairs. After 3 months, we realized people are getting back pains and spondylitis because the home chairs are not meant to sit for 10 hours or 8 hours in a day, right? So we got them. We got everyone. We told everyone, you want your chairs? Most people said yes. So we got them shipped to their homes to all the home office people. So we did that. We ensured that we have a silent hour from 1 to 2, which is your lunch break. That's the time when no Zoom calls, no meetings, no phone calls also. It's called the silent hour and it's blocked to all our 15,000 employees. So it's like a diktat from the top. No Zoom meetings after 6:30 p.m. Lights out every Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. Spend some more time with your family and your kids. Because even schooling is happening from your home now. So we did that. By the way, in anticipation of COVID, we increased our health covers, actually we doubled our death benefit overall. From a minimum of 10 lakhs, we made 20 lakhs. Because we found that the frontline sellers are actually most exposed. And though their salaries would have been about 2.5-3 lakhs in a year, and the cover of 10 lakhs seemed adequate then, we said, no, it's not adequate. When we got really close, and we just doubled it to 20 lakhs. Similarly, all the family benefits on health all were kept continuing. Call centers and migration of the call center was very interesting. We had to follow Uberized calling because no longer were people working in our offices. So, when you want to make a call, the call center will ping, go through VoIP, go to the call agent's home, and then a call will be made so that both the receiver and the caller's numbers are masked for privacy reasons, right? So we had to do a lot of that input tracking, facial recognition, because people are working from home, especially call centers. The reason why call centers were there is people want to be monitored, right, of your input activities. Now we lost control of monitoring. So productivity tanked to 60% in our call centers. And now, as I speak, it's come to 100% back. Thanks to all these interventions. It took time, but I'm happy that now we are able to manage. Future ready in such a situation. Yes, actually we've given up one floor in our home office because many people are comfortable working from home. We are not forcing anyone, but many people seem to be comfortable to work from home as well. So this I think would be future readiness actually, because we are all going through a BCP situation, a business continuity program situation.
Absolutely right. I mean, what you were mentioning earlier also, that these things are going to stay. I mean, there may be certain reversals which will take place, but if you talk about, in general, a lot of these things, good things which are happened in terms of virtual training, in terms of working from home, onboarding, recruitment, which is happening virtually, and they have actually borne good results, and they've actually, reduced cost as far as the organization, cost efficiencies are concerned. And these are, all these things are going to stay. So, it has been such an interesting discussion, I would think that, we'll go on and on, but due to the paucity of time, I'll have one last question from you, which is, how life insurance are looking beyond 2020 and future of insurance industry in next 5 years. If I've talked about, though we have covered some part of it, but I just want to know, seeing in the next 5 years, and you're talking about Mission Impossible, I will talk about James Bond movie which says tomorrow never dies.
Sure. Sure. So, Ashish, very quickly, in the interest of time, I see three mega trends coming, and that's going to sweep all of us in the life insurance sector. One is this shift to protection, pure protection, not just savings. So, India, I think, is moving from a land of savers to a land of protectors. Right? All these trends that we've been observing, especially in the last 6 months. So, will those insurers who are at the forefront of it will win? Right? They will be riding this mega trend. Number one. Number two is digital. Digital used to be an option. Now digital is an imperative. And I think digital, to reduce the effort of the customer and the frontline sales and service person, can create a lot of magic for the insurance company. So digitalization to reduce effort. And the third is customer focus. From focusing on customer transaction to focusing on customer relationships and the lifetime value of customers. So the culture change towards customer obsession and increasing empathy, I think that will be a big change. So essentially three. One is protection, two is digital, and three is customers. So in our company, for instance, our mission is to inspire people to increase the value of their life. Right? And we focus on three things: growth, persistency, and sum assured. That's our compass, GPS, almost like a GPS. So growth is what? Acquired customers. Persistency is what? Retain customers. And S is what? Sum assured. So give them what no other sector can actually provide to them, which is our unique differentiator. So that's really, as I see, the direction in the next 5 years.
Absolutely, very interesting. If I sum it all, that three things which you have said about the future is the protection part, digital part, and the customer focus and lifetime value. I mean, it is always said that acquiring a new customer is 5 times more expensive. And if you have a customer who is absolutely satisfied and convinced, and as you also mentioned in your earlier discussion, 5 times. So he may come to you 5 times, depending on his various needs. He can come. It was 5 times, 7 times. Right. So very, very interesting. And I'm sure all our viewers and everybody who has tuned in must be really have got wonderful insights from you. And thank you very much for being our show, sparing your time and giving us a fantastic insights and a lot of clarifications. In fact, a lot of myths which we had about the insurance sector have been busted. Some of them have been busted, and some of new insights which actually will have given us food for thought, I would say. Thank you very much for being on our show. And as a token of appreciation, we'll present you a digital certificate. So I'll request my colleague Amit to present a digital certificate to you. In the meantime, final lines from you, Vishy, to our viewers. Anything you would like to share? Sum it up.
Well, I would thank you very much, Ashish. It's been interesting. Thank you so much for this digital certification. We've been giving many digital certificates. I'm happy to receive one now.
Okay, right.
But I think net, I would say to all of us, in whichever sector we are in, whether in insurance, whether in BFSI or not, is one, this COVID, and I don't know how many more months, quarters or years this is going to continue to plague us. We should all be focused on purpose. And it's a great time to identify what's our reason to exist. What's our unique value that we are providing in the market? If we perish, who's going to miss us? I think these existential questions, it's a great time to ask ourselves. Number one, purpose. Second is perseverance and grit, because that is required in such times. That's really an essential piece. And third is people engagement. Hold your teams together, because what we do or we don't do, people will remember. And 10 years later, we will be held accountable for it. Good things and not so good things. So treat your people with compassion and always keep in mind, what are they going to talk about us after 10 years? When I'm gone from this seat, maybe from this company, maybe from this sector, but what are those employees going to be talking about? What the decisions that I took? I think that's very important.
Thank you so much for these final words, and thank you so much once again for sparing your valuable time and talking to us and coming to our leadership studio. and giving plenty of information and a lot of insight which we had. Thank you very much once again, Vishy.